governments and corporates with a variety of services to help them with their innovation needs. Our programs are designed to provide immediate solutions to specific use cases, as well as to build long-term innovation strategies. Some of you here are Sosa's partners, and it's great to have you with us. And some are representatives of big corporations, old aimers and some new aimers. It's always great to see some new faces in this great forum. Few words about AIM. AIM is our exclusive community of corporate innovation professionals designed to facilitate powerful connections, knowledge sharing, and bringing innovation agendas to life. So please remember, this session was made for you, and we really invite you to keep your cameras on and engage in the conversation. We have really fantastic speaker today, Udi. I will introduce you in a minute, but before that, maybe we'll few minutes, and I will ask each one of you to introduce yourself, your name, your company, and perhaps share with us small detail about like the best thing that happened to you during this COVID-19 time. So who should we start with? Udi, would you like to say?
I say a few words about, normally I prefer the guests to introduce themselves, but as I was first, I can do it in 30 seconds. Reinhold Cohen, I'll present more thoroughly during the presentation. My name is Udi. I'm a senior partner with Reinhold Cohen, and more details later.
Mali?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm Ali Melton from ELTA, a division and subsidiary of the Israeli aerospace industry. Something about COVID-19. We were involved in some initiatives to help hospitals in Israel with COVID-19 challenges. And for me personally, it was a great sense of meaning, and it really helped to deal with the whole challenge.
Thank you. Dor, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Good morning. Dor Spitzer, the head of innovation in the Israeli Air Force. COVID-19 posed us a lot of opportunities that we took advantage of, especially to help the medical units in the Institute of Health of the government. Quite a learning experience. So I hope we'll have a good day today. Thank you.
Thank you. Khemdat, hi. Yeah.
So hi, my name is Khemdat. I'm the head of strategy and business development at Connect, which is the Volkswagen Group Innovation Hub in Tel Aviv. We're back in the office, but today I'm at home. And when it comes to COVID-19, we were asked by the headquarters to find startups that can introduce a virus-free interior, virus-free car concept, antibacterial materials, and anything that can detect COVID in the vehicle, but also when entering a factory. So we pushed some Israeli startups to our headquarters, and hopefully there will be some follow-ups there.
Wonderful. Thanks. Thank you for sharing. Jonathan. Jonathan? Perhaps unmute yourself. We'll come back to Jonathan a little later. Doris?
Yeah, hi. I'm sorry I'm not with a camera because the Wi-Fi here is not so good. So nice to meet you, everybody. Doris Pitilon. I'm the head of Innovation Lab at Grand Force IDF. The COVID-19, I think, brought us a lot of opportunities. We did a huge sprint in open innovation model with hundreds of engineers and doctors all over the country to solve 15 problems that the doctor had. So I got the chance to work with some amazing people. Mali was in the sprint. Dudi Rokach helped us. So it was a really great experience, and we really helped the doctors in the hospital. So, yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Tiffany, you're next.
Hi, I'm Tiffany from Sing Ventures, which is the corporate venture capital arm of Sing Corporation. I'm very sorry that I don't have my camera on, as well as similar situation with Doris. I think the best thing that during COVID, of course, it's a very sad time, but for us, it accelerated our digital transformation of the group. So for us, I'm not sure if people have visited Thailand, but we are a F&B beer conglomerate in Thailand. We have flagship products like Sing Beer, Singha Beer, which people call it, and Leo Beer and others as well. I also have our head of investments, which is Ott, in the call. I think he will give his introduction later, and happy to join this this session. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. It's really great to have you. Tiffany and Ott are both from Singa Ventures, and they're Sosa's partners. We're very happy to have you here. Ott, you're next.
Hi, everyone. Apologies for not turning on my camera as well. My name is Ott. I lead our investment team for Singa Ventures, which is the corporate venture fund for Singa Group, as Tiffany mentioned earlier. I think the positive side of COVID is, I think on the personal note, I think I'm becoming more intimate with my family and all the loved ones. So I think that's the blessing that we all have at this point in time. But looking forward to the new future and the new normal, where we all survive and thrive in a new environment. And thank you for Sosa for organizing such great events for us to come together today. Thank you.
Great, our pleasure. Let's see, who's next? Yanai?
Yes, hi, good morning, everyone. I'm sorry, I have some connectivity issues over here, so I can turn on the video. I belong to Marubeni Corporation, which is a Japanese, originally Japanese corporation. Today it's a multinational, and I'm the business development manager, boots on the ground in Israel. And I guess that the best thing personally that happened to me during the COVID-19 is that finally the Japanese gave up on using fax machines. Other than that, it's business as usual.
All right, thank you, everyone. I think the rest of the participants, some are...
We also have Yossi.
Oh, I missed Yossi. Where's Yossi?
And
Yossi,
Dudi as well.
How can I miss you? Yossi, how are you doing?
Hi, good morning, everyone. So my name is Yossi Stein. I'm the Director of Strategic Alliance of Avanti, managing the EMEA for the OEM team. COVID bring a lot of opportunity, obviously, and it's a huge accelerator. One of the things that we hear from the US is that 30% of the existing employees are not going back to offices, so continue working from home. This is obviously will provide many new opportunities. And personally, we are launching virtual summit. So we've taken all the meetings into the virtual world and launching a virtual summit, and everything is great. Yeah.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Dudi.
So good morning, everyone. Sorry for talking from my car. The main reason is that I'm supposed to be in Rafael, and the security organization in Israel don't allow to use Zoom. I am the managing partner of Sosa Igelestek, responsible for all our partners from the security world. And the best thing that happened in the COVID-19, that 3 of my children came back home for 1 month. It was great. And actually they go back to their home now. So we are back to work. Happy to be here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So I'd like to welcome everyone to our IP due diligence for corporate session presented by Reynold Cohen Group. We have with us Udi, a patent attorney and advocate, manages the high-tech practice of Reynold Cohen Group. The Reynold Cohen Group is the leading intellectual property consulting firm in Israel. The group operates in all areas of IP, such as patent, trademarks, designs, copyrights, open source, and more, providing the full range of intellectual property consulting services with vast experience in all technological fields. So without further ado, I will let Udi start his presentation. Again, I welcome everyone to ask questions during the session. It's an intimate group of people, and I hope you guys will gain some great information and practices from this. Udi.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, we're speaking about the COVID-19. So we also experienced a flood of innovations coming from our clients and new clients. It's, the startup nation at its best, but not only startups. Mali is here, for example, from Israel Aerospace Industries. And it's interesting to see that a company like this, which of course its area of specialization is more into the field of security and defense and so forth, came with amazing new ideas. For example, detecting coronavirus from remote and new kind of trusted and cheap to manufacture ventilators and so forth. So the Israeli startup nation at its best. I'm going to go through a very brief presentation, giving you the highlights. It's very interesting, your introduction. So now I get to know a bit more intimate. Knowing you, I think it's a great opportunity also for us. Although we are an office, I'll introduce it in the presentation, but we are the largest and oldest intellectual property firm in Israel. We are 86 years old, but we learn every day and every time. With me, by the way, who was not introduced, is Ori Giliam here, who is here, is the CEO of our Reinhold Cohen. And I think that the great opportunity in this meeting is in our daily basis, we see a lot of, I would say, interaction point between the startups and the multinational companies for potential cooperation, for doing business together and so forth. And we gain some experience in how to reduce the friction, the inherent friction, which can may allow this cooperation to go more smoothly. Now, it's a great panel here to share very briefly our experience in this and to hear what you think about it. I think that, so this can be enlightening to all the group here to better understand how to make this happen better. Startups making business with multinational companies. So that's what it will be, a brief presentation. Then we'll have a discussion, and the brave guys from among the participants who will be able to stand it until the end. Then I promise a joke, and I also promise it's a funny joke. So it's worthwhile to do the whole session. I'll go through the presentation right now. Just 1 minute. Okay. So I introduced my name, and now just 1 minute. Why doesn't it go into? Excuse me, some technical problem here. Yes, response of the computer. Reinhold Cohen Group, few words about our group. As I said, we are 86 years old. We are the largest and the firm in Israel. We are more than 200 employees, and we specialize in all aspects of intellectual property, and in particular in the field of strategic consultancy. And this gives us an interesting viewpoint on what's going on in terms of how to convert the intellectual property into a business value. I don't know what's the background of all the participants, so I'll very, very briefly go over background, and believe me, it's going to be short and not painful, just that we'll have the common terms, and then we'll go to some examples, which I think would be the basis for our discussion. So patents basically are granted for an idea which qualifies a certain criteria. The deal is that the society gives a monopoly for 20 years to inventor, to exclude others from exploiting the innovative idea, provided that he or she is going to disclose the content of the innovative idea to the public. The public is exposed to this new idea, not only benefits from using it, but since the whole idea was exposed in terms of how it works, it allows the others to look, improve it, introduce better products, and so forth. There are a few criteria for that qualify for an invention to be a patentable invention. I'll go through very, very briefly. Novelty means it has to be new. You can't get a patent for something that is already known. That's quite clear. Why should the society give 20 years monopoly for something that is already known? But it's not enough that the invention will be a novel. It has to constitute what we call inventive step, meaning some brightness, some innovative concept which is not trivial. It's a legal question, very complicated, what exactly constitutes inventive step or not, but intuitively, something that is more than, you can't get a patent for something that is only new. It has to embody something that's a little bit more than being only novel, and we call it inventive step. Of course, it has to be used for industrial application. You can't get something theoretically. Patents are in the field of practical things. Enablement is the issue that the inventors tend to forget, and that's what I mentioned. This is the underlying concept of the deal between the inventor and the society. Enablement means you have to describe the invention and how it works. You can't just give the high-level idea, because you get monopoly for 20 years. It's a serious issue. You block competition, you prevent competition, the society does not encourage it unless you disclose the content of your innovative idea. And this is the enablement. Statutory subject matter, I'll come to it in a few slides. That's more relevant to biotech and software-related inventions, and I'll come to it in a second. Okay. Not all the inventions are patentable. It has to be, by the way, per jurisdictions, per country. For example, things like mathematical equations by themselves, discoveries that I found, like Newton discovery, yes, he couldn't get a patent for this. Method of doing business, great ideas that make business better but have no technological underlying concept are not eligible. So there are some topics that are excluded from patentable subject matter, but most of the technological fields are definitely patentable and can get a patent for. Now, what does it mean? And I'm now focusing on the issue of software-related inventions, because this is a thorny issue and controversial issue, and that's my area of specialization. Many in the industry says, forget software. It cannot be patentable. First of all, secondly, if it is patentable, it won't give a real benefit, because if you protect the software, you can easily modify the code and you circumvent or bypass the protected concept. Forget it. So I want to make a statement which I hope you guys, those that are less familiar with this, and those who are familiar with this, I'm sure they are aware of it. Software is patentable. It is an enforceable and is enforceable in most of the leading jurisdictions. I'm speaking about US, Europe, all the relevant important countries in Europe, including Germany, Spain, Italy, France, UK, China, Japan, Korea. So in most of the industrial countries, software-related inventions are patentable. Now, how would I know if a software-related invention is patentable? This is a legal question that is dealt here from the year 1972 until these days. We are speaking about 48 years, but I'm going to give you guys this in one sentence. If the software solves a technical problem in the field of software, okay? Issues like real time, like database, like machine learning, like being more efficient in memory and computational complexity and so forth. Yes, it is patentable, provided that it meets all the other criteria that we've just outlined. So, you know, just an example, you say I gave you few fields, but you can, guys, you can add as many as you want, almost in any field that you can think of, okay? So if you have a new concept of remote detection of the COVID virus, yes, using some techniques that you don't have to measure, let's say, yes, the temperature, you can do it remotely, patentable. If it's novel, inventive step, and let's say it's made, particularly the innovation resides in the software. So almost in any field that you can think of, if you solve the technical problem, yes, it is patentable. Now, one word about China. Okay, China is a mega power in patents, and exactly as there is a myth about software are not patentable, there is another myth. Forget China; they'll copy everything. You can't get a patent. Big mistake. If China is a market, either a market or potential investors, I'm going to show you a nice video taken from WIPO, from the International Organization of the Intellectual Property, which shows what happened. There is an application called PCT. In simple words, it's an international application, patent application. If you file an international patent application, it means you seriously pursue your invention. Now I'm going to show you what happened to China since 2005 compared to the leading country. It's a 30 seconds clip, and let's start it. Just let it. Here we go. Let's see it. Bad news for Donald Trump for November 2020. China is number one now. In terms of the PCT, they are very serious, and they take, I can do a whole presentation about it, but the bottom line is you can't ignore China if you seriously consider business in terms of intellectual property. Okay, now this was the tough and demanding part of the presentation. Now we are going to a bit slow down. So now I want to speak more of our experience about cooperation between startups and multinational corporates. I want to give one out-of-the-box example, which does not relate to the cooperation between startups and multinational companies, but it's amazing how patent played role strategically. And in this respect, I have many examples, but I like to give the Qualcomm example. And I always like to quote in this respect what the patents give as a value in terms of the strategic contribution to the goals of the company. So I would like to quote in this respect the great philosopher and alcohol distributor Al Capone, who used to say, "You always get with a smile and gun much more than you get with a smile only." And that's, you know, how you can regard intellectual property, not necessarily actually executing the threat, but defensive wise, it gives a lot of power and gives help to achieve the competitive edge. The Qualcomm story starts with Hedy Lamarr. Some assert that she was the most beautiful woman in the 40s. She's an actress. She was Delilah in Samson and Delilah. She has a star in Hollywood Boulevard. But she was also a she was also electric engineer. She was married to an Austria back at the World War II, to an Austrian guy from the military, from the Austrian military industry, which supported the Nazis regime. And they were facing the problem that their torpedoes no longer hit the designated targets, because the Americans have found out a way to circumvent it to spoof it by actually intercepting the frequency of operation and transmitting and interrupting signal with a higher intensity, which confused the torpedo, which no longer hit the target. And they were struggling how to do it. Hedy invented in 1942 the patent that you can see here, the drawing. And if you look in the Google, you'll see this patent in full. The deal with Hedy's patent is very simple. She is the inventor of what we call signal hopping. Don't be afraid from the term. I'll explain it in simple words. Signal hopping says a very simple concept. I'm not transmitting my signal in only one frequency. I switch frequencies. So if the other target intercepts this frequency, I already switch to another frequency, which he's not aware of, and so forth. Hedy Lamarr immigrated to the US, married husband number 4, I believe, an American. She had 6 altogether. Married a husband. He didn't survive long, but he was in the military American industry. She introduced the concept. The Americans have adopted it, used it until the end of World War II, managed to destroy many vessels. She didn't get a penny for this, but I told you, she was an actress and she had a star. Now, why am I telling you all this? Because of this. Irving Jacobs, the CEO of Qualcomm in 1987, understood that we are all going to use this and that there will be not enough frequencies for everyone to use it. And he invented the CDMA, which is based on the concept of the signal hopping of Hedy, which by the time that he introduced it in '85 was already revealed to the public. It was no longer a secret. And he invented the concept. He filed and pursued 7,000 patents before someone even noticed. And he monopolized the 3G. Now we have 4G. They monopolized the 3G, meaning that every multinational company who wanted to manufacture a cellular phone, by that time it included Samsung and Sony Ericsson and Nokia and Motorola. Apple was not a significant player at the time. Had to pay, they say, up to $10 per unit. There were, as you were, millions of units, and Qualcomm made a lot of money by dominating the market through patents. By the way, the industry had well understood the lesson, and in 4G and 5G, there is no longer a single player. All the players are very heavily loaded with patents to prevent another gorilla story to prevail in 4G and 5G protocols. So that is the general story. I want now to, by the way, at that time, most of the revenue came from the patents. And by the way, the attempts of the other mega corporates to try and say, just 1 minute, Qualcomm is large, but we are larger altogether. They understood that there is no way to invalidate meaning undo the ability to get a patent and make the patent not in force. They understood that they will never invalidate 7,000 patents, maybe 3,000 or 4,000. So they'll anyhow have to pay. So they decided we'll pay, but we learned the lesson and adopt it in 4G, and that's what they did. Now I want to go back to our landscape, our outlook. Reinhold Cohen, what is our experience in the cooperation between startups and multinationals? It's a 5-minute session, and then we'll go to the Q&A. And I want to give you specific examples where we saw what is the value of intellectual property for enhancing the cooperation between startups and multinational companies. The first one is Alibaba and Visualead. By the way, we have many examples, but I can only, I can't do name dropping for all of them, so I picked a few just to give an idea. Visualead is a small startup. They invented a new, you all knew what is QR code. One of the problem with QR code that it's simply ugly. If you have it on your business card, it's a black dots. It's not. Its ornamental effect is not great. What Visualead did, a bunch of very bright guys. I'm putting it in simple words. They invented, that's called the first generation of QR code. They invented the second generation of QR code. and the third generation of QR code. For example, just to give you an idea, if At in her business card can take a photo of herself, self-portrait, and incorporate in the portrait the information that is relevant to the QR code. So for the QR code reader, the information is there. But for us who are looking at her business card, we see At, we don't see dots, black dots. This was, of course, very appealing for the Chinese, because as you know, in China, QR code is very popular. And Alibaba, we all know Alibaba, their first acquisition of a startup in Israel was Visualead. We did the patents for Visualead. And I can tell you that the effort and that Alibaba invested in due diligence of the IP portfolio of Visualead, in particular, the patents of Visualead in China, was amazing. We thought that we did a good job, but we didn't believe that they'll go that thorough. After the deal was nearly signed, it was between the term sheet and the closing. They took it very, very, very seriously. Why? You guys from the MNC, I'm sure, aware of it, because they knew, Alibaba, that by the moment that they will take it and adopt it and circulate it in China, this idea, what will happen is the competition will immediately, their guerrilla competition, we look and say, just a minute, we cannot lag behind. So we have to also adopt it. And here, the power of the intellectual property protection and the patents were very strong. And I showed you a few slides ago how China treats patent when we looked at the now surpassed US. This is the case, the use case of Alibaba Visualead. Second case is Samsung CorePhotonics, another of our clients. CorePhotonics have invented this. Nearly every telephone that you guys have more than one camera. If you recall, 3 years ago, this was not the case. We had one camera. This is 2 or 3 cameras, 3 and 4 and so forth, which are able to do optical zoom, which is true zoom, but without moving lens. Because no one is willing to absorb, no one is willing to buy a telephone, a cellular phone, where the lens goes in and out. We want it flat here, right? That's what we want. So it was a technological challenge. CorePhotonics have solved this concept, filed many patents, tried to negotiate with Apple. We were the one who running the strategic consultancy in the IP for CorePhotonics. Eventually, a deal did not was not implemented between CorePhotonics and Apple. I'm not going into details apart from saying things are in public, in that CorePhotonics sued Apple for patent infringement in California. By the way, no one sues Apple in California, but they did. And eventually Samsung bought CorePhotonics. So now CorePhotonics is Samsung. We all understand, you don't have to be a PhD in MIT to understand, that CorePhotonics had they are very brilliant engineers and entrepreneurs, amazing. But they had no chance to play a significant role, the role that they played in the court, in the court where Samsung is the one party and Apple is the other party, if they had not a serious portfolio of patents. And they made it, and eventually Samsung bought it. So this is the second case. And the last case is another one of our clients. All these, what I'm telling you is public, so there is no proprietary information. UVI, it's a great startup that we represent. They are in the field of automotive. I'll give you just an example. For example, they have some smart undercarriage machine learning concept. So for example, if someone tried to conceal some kind of bombs underneath the car or drug traffickers, so what you'll do, you go all these places where a guy puts a mirror underneath or dogs smell. They don't care. You can go with your car. They have portable cameras that are placed on the road on the bumper, and you drive regularly on the car. The cameras acquire the undercarriage of the car. They don't need, by the way, to know which car, what year, what model, they don't care. And immediately through their machine learning, they'll be able to see if something is wrong there. You concealed something that is not belonging to the car. And then they can, run more careful tests to see what's really there. They have some other concept. This was very interesting to Toyota and Volvo, which had a very serious round B there. And I'm telling you that when Toyota and Volvo were doing due diligence, since the concept of UVI, they have some other interesting products, were of so interest to these corporates. So they, of course, want to make sure that if they adopt the technology, then the competition has less access to this. And they did a very, very serious due diligence for the IP to make sure that indeed the new things, the proprietary things are indeed adequately protected before they made the investment. So I have many, many examples. I just gave you three in different points of the life cycle of a startup. It can be round B. This is example of the Toyota. It can be exit, as in the case of Visualead. It can be where you enter a battlefield between giants and you want your voice to be heard, okay, among these giants. So these are three out of numerous examples that we can give where IP played a significant role in contribution to the business. And now I think we should hear what you have to think about this, about the cooperation between startups and your corporates, the advantages and disadvantages, and whether you see that IP can serve in this arena. So I think we're now open to discussion.
Okay, if you could stop sharing the screen, though.
Yeah, great.
I want to start with a question, Udi. Why do you think it's so important to work with a startup that has a solid patent? If I'm a big corporate, can I just buy the technology and then patent it myself?
I think that there is an inherent conflict between a startup and MNC that they want to cooperate. Normally, the fear resides on the startup side. They have their innovation, it's their baby. They're afraid that if they are going to expose it to the larger company, in many cases, the larger company has their engineers, have their R&D, are working in a different field, that this idea is going to leak to the MNC, and that's their main concern. So on the one hand, they want to cooperate because they understand that this is their way to the market. But on the other way, they're afraid. They're afraid to disclose their only one jewel, that this is why they raise the money and so forth. And I think that this lack of trust, or I wouldn't lack of trust, this fear could be dissolved, could be easily handled if the startup company had protected what they consider as the main intellectual property before discussion with the MNCs. Now the discussions could be more open and more, because they'll be less afraid, more open and pursue without the fear that someone will say a word that is a wrong word. Be free, be open, share whatever you have in order to make the deal happen. And I think from the MNC, this is the same. They also don't want to waste their time. They want this meeting, if they believe it's of interest, they want to hear what the startup has to offer. Now, they very, very rapidly, they want to go to the gist of the ideas. What, guys, are you offering? We want to see if it's good for us or no. If they start to tell stories around, it's waste of time for everyone. So if I protect my intellectual property before the interaction, then I think the chances of making deal increase. If on the other hand, I leave it to a later stage, not only that the fear remains, but in many cases, you can no longer file a patent application, because we remember from slide number 2 in my presentation, you can only file a patent application if it's new, If I disclosed it voluntarily to someone else, it's no longer new. If I'm going to cope with this by signing NDA, non-disclosure agreement, I know transaction that it took 6 months just to agree on the wording of the NDA. I don't believe in NDAs. So file patent application, go to your business partner, talk, and try to make a deal.
All right. Thank you. Guys, it's your time to share if you have any use case, any example that you need Udi's advice on, please.
Do we need to raise a hand or do we just jump in?
No, please. Welcome, Yoav. You missed our round of introduction, so perhaps...
I did. I apologize.
No worries.
But it was a fascinating session from the moment I joined, so thank you for arranging. And Udi, thank you for the amazing review. I'm part-time with Ramot, so obviously this is fascinating for me. And I know Mendelovich from CorePhotonics that you mentioned very intimately. My question, though, is in a very specific area of innovation relating to data science, what marketing teams call AI in the last 2 years. It seems to be a field a bit challenging for patenting or using that tool in order to drive innovation. I'm wondering if you have any specific examples that your office has dealt with in that realms of deep learning models, machine learning, things of that sort. If you can disclose.
I want to say something very, very important. I don't know if you were in the part of the presentation that I talked about the fields. Listen, you can't take under assumption that there are fields that are excluded. I'm today filing a very significant patent application, which for a company who in the Corona managed to raise the nice round of fundraising. It's based on machine learning. We, the patent attorneys, learn how to adapt the general concept into the relevant field. I am telling you, anyone who now says, listen, it's AI, it's machine learning, forget it, it's cannot patentable, is going to make a big mistake for 2 reasons. First of all, as I said, it's patentable. But let's say they either don't believe in it, or they had the rumors that, that you know, it's not patentable. Statistically wise, I'm telling you that the number of patent applications, which eventually mature to patents in the field of artificial intelligence, will double every year or every 2 years. So if, for example, and I gave this example in a presentation that I gave, by the way, in Sosa, New York, about blockchain. Blockchain is even worse than artificial intelligence. I didn't believe that you can get patent for blockchain. How can you get patent for blockchain? It's open source, it's anonymous, it's method of doing business. All the boxes are unchecked. So my initial, after 25 years of experience, my initial intuition says, don't file for blockchain. If you now look on statistics of the patents in the field of blockchain, I'm not speaking about patent applications, about granted. They are even you get more patents than that in the field of artificial intelligence. What does it mean in bottom line for a startup? It means, let's say that the startup is founded today, 2020. Let's say that they'll achieve their pot of gold, M&A in 2027. I give them 7 years, okay? Let's say that they will be sold in $500 million. Let's say that there is a term sheet that is signed for $500 million. I'm telling you, and we had a case like this, there are many cases after the term sheet, the buyer wants the details of the transaction to be published because he wants to see if there are any problems, okay? Sometimes, by the way, the trick is that they publish it, they you know, to Wall Street Journal, they give the information, but with a price that is 3 times more than the true transaction. So there will be no competition. Then, believe me, if you didn't file a patent application, and there are thousands over thousands already granted patents in this field, and this will be the case, you'll find yourself with many, many new partners who are going to send you a letter, and we had cases like this, more than one, after the term sheet saying, hi, you don't know me, but I know you. believe it or not, we are new partners because I have a patent in your field. And what would the buyer would tell you by that time? You tell you, listen, it's your responsibility to get rid of this threat and do it before the closing. So you have to have an ammunition. So my answer to you is in two aspects. First of all, from the standpoint of patent, you can get an enforceable patent also in the field of artificial intelligence, including machine learning. There's a way to do it, but it's possible. B, others 100% will pursue this route, and among these others are your direct competition. So if you ignore it, you'll face the consequences business-wise, sometimes in the road.
Amazing, thank you. Would love to explore more offline, but I don't want to take from anyone's time.
Great job, we'll be in touch. Great.
I'd like to add a couple of sentences, if I may. Can I?
Please, of course.
All right, so first of all, I'll introduce myself. My name is Ori Gilliam. I've been the CEO of the Reinhold Cohen Group for the last couple of years. Prior to that, I had been in the high-tech business as CEO of a few companies and in other positions. Some of the companies that I ran are probably known names to you. Since we're speaking English and we discussed AIM, I want to also mention that I ran AIM as AOL Instant Messenger. So I see here former users, I assume. I also ran ICQ. I want to give another angle for this discussion. Udi's talked about how important IP is for the due diligence process, you know, at the time of exit, where all startups really want to get to the exit stage. And I want to remind you that there's always a challenge, there's always a tension between, do we make the investment in IP, or do we develop another module, or do we get another function into the product? And as Udi, I'm sure, have already persuaded you that IP is extremely important in the due diligence process, I want to go and take that statement backwards and remind you that experienced investors understand that. Experienced investors understand that IP is important in the due diligence, and it makes exits a bit easier to execute. And when they understand that, they take it to their stage, to their business, and they say, if it's an easier exit, then it should be invested in. So the point that I'm trying to make is, as an IP-based system, an IP-based company, it's easier to sell. And I'm reminding you that most of Israeli exits are not done for their revenue or for their market share. Most of them are done on technology. It's easier to raise money when you have IP, because investors understand that, and that's very important to them. So it's one of the things that you guys need to remember when you make this decision.
Can I ask a question, Ifat, to the very distinguished participants?
Of course.
I would like to hear from any of you guys, from your experience, when you approach a startup, do you find what we sometimes face is that they are reluctant, I mean, they want to do business, but they are reluctant to share their most secret points because they're concerned for the reasons I explained. And if you encounter this, how do you cope with this? How do you make them share with you? How do you increase their security that the discussions are safe and they can disclose to you whatever you guys need in order to move to the next step of the business transaction with the startup?
Anyone? Is it a matter of creating trust between the corporate and the startup? And if yes, how do you do this?
I can share that, first of all, of course, we had a lot of encounters with startups that they were reluctant of sharing. One startup in specific, they didn't want to come to the first meeting without an NDA, which was the first for me. I mean, the first meeting usually is just getting to know you and the general idea and what problem you're trying to solve without getting into the technology. But so I never got a request for an NDA before the first meeting. So this was like an extreme situation. And regarding your question, of course, it's a matter of trust and it's very personal. I mean, I see some very experienced entrepreneurs that they are more open and they can discuss and explain their startups without fearing of exposing like critical technology. But another technical tool that I find very useful is that I'm not including people. I'm not coming with engineers to the meeting. I'm an engineer myself. They know it. I'm not hiding it. And we're talking about, we want to know what is their value proposition without getting to the patent or the IP itself. So I find it very useful to create a safe environment and trust. Of course, me coming from a corporate, it's a bad starting point with the startups. They always feel that we are very big and we are coming to take the IP. But I feel more and more that startups are creating this with me, together with me. It's a process and they are willing to share.
Mali, may I ask just a supplemental question? Let's say that this first meeting went very well. I mean, you didn't bring your engineers, they didn't go overly to the proprietary, they showed high level and they explained, and they are in a field that Israel Aerospace Industries or ELTA have a fairly good understanding in this field. And now comes the question, in their slide number 4, they show some amazing results from their simulation. That's which you think is really advantageous because you guys have not achieved this level of quality of what they show. So now the very intuitive next step would see just guys, it's very impressive, but we need to better and more, to be more sure if we want to go next phase, that you guys, how did you do this miracle compared to what we know in this field? So there are not always you can circumvent going into the technical details. You're right, in many cases it is. But at certain stage, there may be a requirement in order to move to the next step that they need to disclose, not the code maybe, but they need to be more specific and not always you are a technical engineer, but maybe this expertise is in a different field in ELTA. So you may need to bring engineer to evaluate what you say. First of all, have you encountered this situation? And if yes, how do you cope with them?
So yes, we have encountered this situation. Normally, if it's a new field for us and they're showing a remarkable result that we cannot understand, we are starting a technical dialogue that they will try to explain us the setup that brought this result without getting, and it's very settled, it's like a dance, you're trying very gently to understand without getting to the core IP. But sometimes if it's not possible, the next step will be, when you cannot resolve it like in a conversation, will be a POC. Sometimes it's funded. We are funding an experiment that they can, in our terms, we define the result that they have to show us and prove like in a scenario that we are defining. So we can be convinced that there is something there to move forward without disclosing the technology. Sometimes an NDA helps, but sometimes we need to do like field experiments to prove that technology.
Great. I just want to ask you, Mali, since you tempt me to the next phase. So if I just, let's say that I represent the startup, and before they go to POC with you, and they tell me, listen, we want to have a deal with ELTA. This is very important for us. It will take us from stage A to stage B business-wise, okay? And before they go to the POC or before they go to the next meeting with Mali's engineers, because they show remarkable results, and Mali says, guys, hey, you need to convince us, okay? They come to me and we write a patent application for the underlying concept innovative concept that led to these remarkable results. And now I'm telling them as a patent attorney, guys, whatever Mali asks, answer. You have no limitation. You file the patent application a day before the meeting or the day before the POC. You can answer whatever they ask. And you come now to a meeting, and surprisingly, you can bring as many engineers as you want, and any technical question that you ask, they answer in full. In regard to this innovative concept that led to this result, would you regard this as something that promotes the business, the potential of business between you guys? You are interested in that, they're interested in you, compared to the situation that you described to me, where you still, each party has to, you know, as you said, initially no engineer. Later on, we try not to go to the proprietary and so forth.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear most of your question. I was disconnected from the session and I got back.
Okay, so I'll do it in short.
Summarize it.
I'll summarize it in one sentence. Compared to the situation, I'm representing a startup coming to you and I'm telling them, listen, whatever Mali asks,
yeah, you can answer.
Whatever, how deep it goes, answer. We file patent application before the meeting. Now, guys, she can bring as many engineers as she wants. You answer whatever question that she asks, technical question. Would you see it as an advantage?
Of course, it's reassuring for us, but usually we're not getting there. I mean, we're not going that deep because I really want to start up, even if they are like protected with a patent and their attorney advise them to tell me everything. Usually it's not going that deep if we are not going into a very strategic partnership. If it's just an initial stage and we're not just exploring the technology and look for a use case within the company, so usually we're not going that deep, but of course it's easier for me to find a use case and to convince inside the corporate to find the right partner if they are willing to share. It removes a lot of barriers.
Ali, thanks. Any other views, please? I'm very much curious to hear from your experience, other participants.
No? All right.
Well,
can I ask
experience, oh, sorry.
No, I talked enough. I have a question, but later.
So I just wanted to add on top of what you contributed to the conversation that in my experience, when it came to investing in with startups, I mean, not from the remote perspective, but working directly with startups and being able to file a patent, sometimes there was a concern that even if they do have a patent and they do disclose and it gets violated, they wouldn't have the deep pockets enough to go through the judicial proceedings that will entitle them back from the IP that was stolen. So that's also a concern sometimes.
Yoav, you know, the example of without disclosing too much, I'm sure you don't need to have a great imagination to understand that when CorePhotonics startup, yes, you know the Mendelovich stood Apple, they didn't plan to pursue this lawsuit by themselves all the way. So, you know, if you have a good case, it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to bear the consequences by yourself. I revert to the example of Al Capone. You have a weapon, you don't necessarily have to shoot in the forehead of your rival in order to achieve advantage. Sometimes they need to see that you have a pistol which can do this damage and they act accordingly. So, you know, it's a business tool that you can use. This does not mean, and no one will do it, most of the startups will not do it, will waste the investors' money in lawsuits. But they have the right to sue, which they can use it at any stage, or their buyer or investor can leverage in later stage. You know, it's not a right that evaporates in 48 hours. If I can show
I totally agree. Drawing from an academic perspective, just like if you're a PhD student, you need a strong professor, I guess. As a startup, you just need a good lawyer.
So what would be the ideal process for corporates? What would your suggestion will be to them to act next time they're about to meet a startup and to get into a due diligence process?
Is it?
Yeah, Udi.
Listen, from my experience, what I think is the MNC, the large company, if they want to enter a startup to discuss with the startup, apparently there is the prerequisite has been met, namely the startup has some value that the MNC can benefit from this value. Otherwise, they would do it by themselves. Okay, that's the starting point. Mali is right that not in all the cases the business transaction requires go into details. Right, but we don't know it in advance. We don't know, we know how it starts. We don't know what will be the next stage. At a certain stage of the discussions, even if for Mali, I'm referring to you, Mali, because you were giving the examples here. He's saying, listen, I don't have to go to the details. It runs very nicely. But at a certain stage, the startup representative can give a statement, says, just 1 minute, guy, I didn't understand this one. How did you get this one? During the discussions. Say, I'm sorry, this goes into the details. Stop. So I think that from the MNC standpoint, if they are self-confident about that their own innovation is protected from the standpoint of the MNC, and they don't afraid of leakage for the other direction, that means that they have to run a very good intellectual property strategy at their end. They should encourage the startup, not ask them, but they should be happy with the fact that the startup is coming with intellectual property, because you have two advantages. First, it simplifies the discussion. No barriers. If there is a need to take it, don't contribute if not necessary. But if for the sake of closing the deal, there is a need to disclose information, disclose it, because it's a very crucial information for closing the transaction. We need to reduce barriers. We know that there is a lot of psychology between parties negotiating to close a deal. Why should we add more burdens? Okay, so let's keep it simple. Guys, you've been answered. It's a relevant answer. It's not a sniffing question. Give an answer. Okay, you are smart enough as a startup, and the MNC should encourage it. That's A. B, when the MNC, if the transaction goes well, and eventually the MNC becomes a strategic investor or owner of the startup, then they benefit from retroactive benefits from the intellectual property against their own competition. So it's a double impact. At a later stage, I give you the example of Alibaba who bought Visualead. Yes, now Samsung holds all the proprietary of CorePhotonics, and they can sue Apple, and so forth. So there are many business transactions that the MNCs, if it matures to a business, benefits from a good IP strategy that the startup has managed. So in the bottom line is A, it simplifies the negotiations and discussions. And if there is a good ground to close the deal, at later stage, when the MNC, the larger company, has a real interest in this company and wants to pursue until ownership or significant player as a significant shareholder, then all this suddenly becomes a real advantage against the true competition, the other guerrilla competition in the market. So I think the MNCs should encourage the startups coming to them. Guys, if you have propriety, file patent applications. I don't want to sign NDAs. I don't want to waste times and hours of discussing what exactly is the language of NDA, and go to my legal department, you go to your lawyer. Let's discuss. Think of Corona. Can we wait now? If there is, if there is now a startup coming and says, I have something is Corona, do they have time now to waste for 4 months the legal department exchange of the language of the NDA? We want it tomorrow morning in the market.
Thank you. One last chance for one last question, if anyone has any. If not,
I promised a joke, if I don't forget.
Oh, that's right, Udi.
What if a 60-second joke? Because
yes.
they're really brave to, to listen to my boring stuff for full 1 hour. Now they need, there was a good, now I'm going to compensate for this. So I know in patents there are disadvantages. Of course, it's costly, and sometimes you invest in something that you won't later use, and it definitely requires attention from the management. So not everything in you, but as I said, everything in life is relative, and I like to remember I convey my messages through jokes because they are remembered better. So one comes to the doctor and says, "Doctor, I understood that you were looking for me. Is there any reason?" He says, "Listen, yes, of course. There is the test results. Remember the blood test that you did? So I have now the results." He said, "Oh, okay, doctor, share with me." He said, "Listen, I have good news for you and bad news for you about these test results. What would you like to hear first?" He said, "Doctor, today is Monday. Make my day. Make my day. Give me the good news." So he says, "Listen, the tests show that you have 24 hours to live." He says, "What?" He says, 24 hours to live. That's what the test's results show. So the guy collapses on the chair, paralyzed. This is a shocking news. 24 hours to live. He can't move. And after 15 minutes, he realizes that these were the good news. So he says, "Doctor, 24 hours to live, and these are the good news. What are the bad news?" He says, "I'm looking for you since yesterday."
All right, I guess time's up. Thank you very, very much, Udi, for a fascinating session. And thank you, Ori, both from Reynold Cohen. I invite everyone to connect. Shir will send us all an email with everyone's LinkedIn profiles. So please feel free to connect. This is really the idea behind this forum. Anything else? Shir, would you like to add anything?
Yes, so first of all, thank you, Udi and Ori and everyone who participated. So you already got actually the participant profile in advance for this event. It was yesterday, so you can definitely do the networking part, which we unfortunately can't do on our physical space as always with a great breakfast, So you're welcome to add each other and communicate through LinkedIn. We will share the presentation with Udi's permission, of course. So you guys could go back and remember what Udi was talking about. We might be able to share also a recording of this session with Udi's permission, as I mentioned. And we're looking forward to see you in our next AIM. And thank you for the people who joined for the first time and our older AIMers for joining again, and have a great week, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Have a great week.
Thank you.